By 1821, she's in Troy. The city fathers have given her
one
a building.
It's a day on Second Street.
By the 1890s,
Willard has died.
Mrs. Sage steps
She
forward.
becomes the president of this alumni association.
Mrs. Sage finally came into her millions. She envisioned the school as being up here on the hill, getting away from the Hudson, away from all the diseases that a downtown has. Mrs. Sage had a dual vision for education. She envisioned educating those young girls who fell between the wealthy and the laboring classes. The trustees were the ones who were negotiating with Mrs. Sage. The board was almost exclusively male. Mrs. Sage was the first female member of the Board of Trustees. It's a time period when it is increasingly acceptable for girls to have a high school education, not necessarily a college education. Emma Willard was preparing girls who wanted to go to college, but also perfectly happy if they used their Emma Willard education as the end point in their education. Fewer than 10% of all high school graduates were going to college. Well, Liza comes in, and she is young and energetic, and she is passionate about building the academic excellence of the school. She wants more and more girls to go to college. She hires a fabulous faculty, including people like Miss Manchester and Miss Weaver.
The 1920s and 30s are great years.
We add buildings to the campus. We add Weaver. We add Kellis Hall.
She weathers the Depression and becomes synonymous with Emma Willard.
After Miss Kellis, Ann Wellington came in. She had been the director of admissions at Wellesley. A year later, she brings Clemwell Lay, and the two of them become co-head mistresses from 1943 on. They definitely did things like bring the first professional photographers onto the campus to take pictures of the students. They made an admissions movie. World War II may have stimulated the economy, after the Depression, but it didn't necessarily stimulate admission to girls' boarding schools. And there was a whole sense in the 40s and especially in the early 50s that maybe these places weren't as relevant as they once were. They also revisited the curriculum, and perhaps the thing that they are most respected for by their former students is the curriculum that they designed. And it was called the correlated curriculum, and it had an integrated arts, music, English literature, American literature, history curriculum that all the girls took. But the correlated curriculum for the women who went through here in the 50s and the 60s was so rigorous and so academically fine that many of them who went on to all kinds of other institutions of higher learning said it was the correlated curriculum that they remember most of all of their education. Bill Deedle came in the early 60s. He really and truly brought an awareness of civil rights to the campus. The day that the Watts Commission report was released, he got a copy for every single kid and had the faculty and the students read it. He helped the school become a part of A Better Chance, which was a program to bring underrepresented groups of students onto the campus, whether they were African American, Native American. The only other male head of school up until that point had been Emma Willard's son, John Willard, who with his wife ran the school from 1838 until 1872. And Bill was the head of school, but his wife, Linda Remington Deedle, was a class of 48 and was very much his partner in the enterprise of running Emma Willard. 1969, Bill left to go on to other things, and within 2 years, everything is breaking loose in the independent school world. Schools are deciding to go co-ed. You know, the whole women's movement, all of the 60s stuff made it seem even more irrelevant to be in a uniform and allowed to go into Troy in a group with a teacher once a month. The school had to rethink itself yet again. There were a couple of heads of school in that decade. There were 2 heads of school, each of whom stayed for 4 years. That was not part of the school's prior pattern of heads of school, although it was certainly part of the pattern in other independent schools at the time. In the 1870s, the school closed as a boarding school. 100 years later, in the 1970s, it might have closed altogether because schools, all independent schools, not just Emma Willard, were under assault. All things that we thought were absolutes were under attack. The way they dealt with it was just to, like, throw the lid off the place. No sit-down meals, no required courses, co-educational opportunities with boys' schools, no uniforms. You know, we'll go with whatever the kids want, if that's what'll bring them in here. In 1979, Robert Parker came in, and essentially in his first 5 years put the issue of coeducation to bed, reestablished a more stringent curriculum that would ensure the academic quality that the school had been known for, and committed to the boarding program by renovations of the dormitories, modernization of facilities, and that sort of thing. Tragically, he died very young. The Dodge study very much helped, not just Emma Willard, but all girls' schools come to grips with what it is we do, that we provide a place for girls to be able to develop their self-confidence, to find their voices, to study without the distractions, not just of boys, because boys are not the evil, they are not the bad, but modern media and what they do with boys and girls relationships and what they do to skew the values of teenagers, that's the evil. And so to be in this setting where all of that is not missing, but at least kept at bay, and where a girl can spend days writing a paper on something and be proud of it and say, wow, you know, I really am an expert now on medieval German history or whatever, and not have people make fun of her for that. By 1990, Robin Robertson was here as the head of school, stayed for 9 years, got the fundraising back on track, biggest capital campaign in the history of the school, was responsible for the Hunter addition to the science building, the construction of the pool, the Cheel Natatorium. She came right at the beginning of the 21st century. So there was, there was clearly the millennial challenge that I suspect every head of school in 2000 was thinking about. But because she came right at that juncture, it was up to her, or it was her charge from the Board of Trustees, to develop a plan for the 21st century, and she did. She began intentional strategic planning, and we actually have a document called A Plan for the 21st Century.
It is not an exaggeration to say that the synergy and the collaborative style of our board ensured that the final outcome is far grander than any one of us might have imagined. We have come to both expect and demand excellence in all our endeavors. And a school with a reputation with such standards makes the impossible possible on a near daily basis.